54 years they were trying to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I did it, and I'm proud to have done it. They wanted to get it back, right? You wouldn't have that. There would be no question. Nobody else was going to get that done but me. Yeah. And we did it, and we did something that was a miracle.
The former president during a Fox News town hall early this month bragging about overturning Roe v. Wade. Yesterday in Virginia, abortion health care was the focus of an impassioned campaign speech by President Joe Biden as he placed the blame for abortion bans across the country squarely on Donald Trump's shoulders.
Let there be no mistake. The person most responsible for taking away this freedom in America is Donald Trump. Listen to what he says. Trump says he's proud that he overturned Roe v. Wade. He said, and I quote, "There has to be punishment for the women exercising their reproductive freedom." He describes the Dobbs decision as a miracle, but for American women, it's a nightmare. So let's be absolutely clear what Trump is bragging about. The reason there are 21 states where abortion bans are in effect, made with no exception for rape or any other or incest, is Donald Trump. It was Donald Trump and his Supreme Court who ripped away the rights and freedoms of women in America. And it'll be Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and all of you who are going to restore those rights for the women of America. In the past year, Trump himself endorsed a federal ban promising to lead the charge. God love him. And that means even if you live in a state where extremist Republicans are not in charge of the state government, your right to choose, your right to privacy is still at risk. But as long as I have power of the presidency, know this: if Congress were to pass a national abortion ban, I will veto it. I will veto it.
Joining us now, Democratic Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia. Senator, first of all, how did President Biden do yesterday? It seems to me the contrast was set out last night with Donald Trump melting down in New Hampshire and Joe Biden looking pretty presidential in Virginia.
Well, Mika, great to be with you guys this morning. And President Biden picked up on a theme that is very powerful in Virginia, and referendum results across the country since Dobbs have shown that it's not a regional issue, it's a national one. Virginia is now the last state in the South that essentially provides to women the protections that they were able to count on under Roe v. Wade. We are it in the South. We just had state legislative elections where a Republican governor and Republican legislative candidates tried to pitch their own version of an abortion ban after 15 weeks. And Virginia voters handed both houses of our legislature to Democrats. This issue is not going away, and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are going to remind voters on the trail every day that it was Donald Trump who has taken away your rights, and the Republicans under Donald Trump will go even farther.
Senator, and certainly your home state, Virginia, shows the power of abortion at the ballot box. We saw that last year. We certainly saw it in the 2022 midterms as well. I did want to ask you about something else that kept happening at that rally yesterday, as the president was repeatedly interrupted by protesters upset with his handling of the situation in the Middle East, upset about what's happening in Gaza right now. And I know there's been some differences in the Democratic Party as to what the approach should be. What is your level of concern about, first of all, just what you're seeing in the Middle East there in Gaza, but also how this could really dog the president going forward?
Well, yeah, let's get to the human cost before we get to the politics. It's heartbreaking in a region of perennial heartbreak. This is just it's awful. The Hamas attack on October 7 was horrific, and it was designed and timed for a horrific purpose, to disrupt a normalization discussion between Israel and Saudi Arabia that actually had at its center a discussion about a Palestinian future. Hamas wanted to disrupt that. And then the heartbreaking toll of the war in Gaza in civilian deaths, in inadequate humanitarian aid, and now the escalation you're seeing throughout the region. So, no, I'm deeply concerned about it. I think, again, before we get to the politics, I think the key right now is really redoubling efforts to get hostages released, because I think to get hostages released, as in the first instance, there would be a trade of hostages for Palestinian prisoners, and there would be a cessation of hostilities for some period of time. And when that happened, remember, the Houthis stopped their escalation campaign during that pause in hostilities. So we need to de-escalate in the region. The last thing the United States needs is to be in another war in the Middle East, for God's sake. We need to de-escalate in the region, and I think the key to that is really putting the focus back on the hostages and doing all we can together with the Israelis, the Qataris, Egyptians, to figure out a way to get hostages released. And in connection with that, you'll have a pause and hopefully a long one in hostilities where we can kind of rebalance this chaotic situation.
Good morning, Tim. I want to ask you about an issue that I know that everybody's focused on up there. Immigration, I think, is a really serious issue. The southern border is a very serious political issue for the Democratic Party for November. I know that there is negotiations that are coming close to a conclusion between Jim Langford, the Republican from Oklahoma, and Chris Murphy, the Democrat from Connecticut, and that you're very close to having a deal to vote on. My question is this. It's my understanding that Mitch McConnell had a very rough caucus meeting yesterday, that the MAGA extremists within the Republican caucus have taken up the position that the House has taken, that they want the issue more than they want a solution. They don't want to pass anything because they want it to still be a huge problem. What assurance can you give us that the Democrats will vote on this bill, even if McConnell doesn't have a huge consensus in his caucus about voting for the negotiated immigration fix?
Claire, you're right. This is really threading a needle because, some want to just use it as a cudgel. They don't want to solve a problem. Some want to solve the problem but have different ideas about how to solve it. I think you're going to see emerge within just a couple of days a deal that we will vote on in the Senate. I predict it's going to pass in a significantly bipartisan way, but you're going to lose Democratic votes and Republican votes. And Claire, as you know, getting 60 votes, it's different if it's 50 Democrats and 10 Republicans than if it's 35 Democrats and 25 Republicans. Both add up to 60, but it's completely different in terms of what happens when that bill goes over to the House. And so I think the plan is coming together. It will be Ukraine aid. It will be a border provision. It will be Israel, Gaza. It will be state disaster relief and Indo-Pacific aid, all in one package. But I think it's going to be a package that's going to lose some votes on the left and the right. You'll make everybody mad, but oftentimes that's what has to happen to get something big done, and I think we're close.
Senator Elise here. You said something just a moment ago talking about foreign policy that made a lot of sense. We simply do not need another war in the Middle East. And you were part of a bipartisan letter to President Biden asking for more congressional oversight of the recent bombing of the Houthis. How much support is there for congressional authorization of the strikes in the Red Sea?
There's a lot of different opinions about it, Elise, but I think there's uniform desire. What's the strategy? What's the path to de-escalation? You not only see the Houthis in the Red Sea, you see Iranian-backed militias in Iraq and Syria. You've got challenges with Hezbollah. There is just this sense of this widening escalation. I mean, even if just looking at Iran and Pakistan are going back and forth, there's a regional escalation, much of it tied to the war in Gaza. And I think what we want from the administration is, what's the strategy for de-escalation? What is the military strategy with respect to the Houthis? If you're doing these attacks to deter and degrade the Houthis, but you're saying that you expect them to respond in kind and so they're not going to stop, well, then what's the strategy? And then as you get that question, how do we de-escalate? What's the strategy? Then you get to authorization questions. Congress has not authorized any military action against the Houthis in Yemen or the Red Sea. the president has cited self-defense, and he needs to defend American ships, American troops, American personnel. But most of the ships that go through the Red Sea are foreign-flagged ships. Self-defense does not apply to protecting the vessels of foreign nations. It might be a good strategy to do it, but the president can't just do it unilaterally without Congress. So we're pressing the administration in a bipartisan way. What is the strategy? And then once we hear that, then we have to have the authorization discussion, because we can't just stumble and slide into a broader regional conflict without Congress taking it seriously and debating it in front of the American public.